Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Sorry I was a little bit late. Today, we have to talk about what's going on in the world again, past and present. The continuity continues with Islam, Europe, migration, crises, etc., etc. And if you haven't been paying attention, what's going on in, I think it's pronounced Ceuta. I have an expert. He'll clarify and he'll correct me, I'm sure. And yeah, something like, I don't know, the number keeps changing. Tens of thousands of Muslims from Morocco are basically storming this little Spanish enclave. And it's why I find that interesting, and we'll get into that, is, of course, that's where the original Islamic conquest began. It was actually that Ceuta was conquered, or Ceuta was conquered around 709, and it became the staging point for the eventual conquest of Spain in 711 and into 712. So anyway, history is repeating itself. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to see you all there making comments, and we'll get to those. But now let me bring on Rodrigo Ballester, and he's a Spanish lawyer and essentially a EU expert on migration. So he really knows about all this stuff. Hi, Rodrigo. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Ray. Very happy to be with all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get right into it. Can you tell us exactly what's going on? Because there's so many different kinds of reports, different numbers, different facts being given, and I know you've been closely following this. So let's start off by just give us the facts as you know them.
The facts are that between yesterday and today, 49,000 people from Morocco stormed the border and penetrated into Spanish territory in this little town, little enclave, Spanish enclave in African territory called Ceuta. Ceuta has 80,000, it's basically 80,000 people, and in 24 hours it was flooded with 49,000. 49,000, so almost the same as the population. Those are the facts.
Yeah. Go ahead. Continue, please.
No, and yesterday the news reporting, even the government said, no, it's 2,000, 3,000. And today the official figures were 49,000. And by doing so, by the way, also 18 people died. People lost their life. And 80,000 local Spaniards in Ceuta are terrorized. I mean, the city now is under siege. You have no shops. People don't really dare to go on the street. You start to having some violence. By now, as we speak, it seems that most of those migrants left, according at least to the Spanish government, which is not a very reliable source of information, but it seems that they are leaving. So it was like a storm. Why? Let's discuss that. There were some precedents already. It's not the first time that it happens, but with that magnitude, I've never seen that.
Right, and I think it's important to remember, because I spoke with some people, and some people may make this argument and are making this argument that Ceuta is, like you said, it's in Africa, even though it's a Spanish territory and has been for a very long time. The argument is that, yeah, this what are you going to do? And this was sort of unprecedented, unexpected, and I'm sure it is to a great extent. But I think the fact is, and you can speak to this a little bit, but Ceuta has sort of been a vulnerable point for a long time, because I remember every once in a while for the last years, maybe decade at least, always coming across reports about similar things, of course not at this magnitude, but similar things of migrants, a few thousand here, a few hundred there. So clearly this has already been sort of a hot point for a while, and that's why I feel like the government at least must be aware. This isn't something that should take them completely by surprise.
Well, you're absolutely right, Raymond. You're absolutely right. There's nothing new. The only thing we can be really shocked about is the magnitude, is the footage. It was like in one of those catastrophic movies from the 70s. What we can be shocked about is like indeed there were 49,000 for the first time, but that Ceuta and the other Spanish enclave, so Ceuta, that's the pronunciation, and the other Spanish enclave called Melilla are vulnerable ponds. This is I mean, common knowledge. Everyone knows, and nobody really ever did something about it. And that's the problem as well. So, okay, the situation is complicated. I mean, just think about it. We have in Europe a massive problem of illegal migration from Africa. We're basically a continent, Europe, of old, very old and rich people facing a continent, a huge continent of young and poor people. That's basically it. And we are separated, I mean, between, like the south of Spain, so Gibraltar and Africa, it's 14 kilometers, it's 10 miles. So, on a sunny day, you can see Africa from Spain. You can see it with your eyes. And again, you face a continent of young and poor people. And the only land border that this big continent has with this old continent called Europe are Ceuta and Melilla. So, of course, those are very hot borders, very hot points. And also, it's not only that they are hot borders, that those territories are disputed because Morocco keeps claiming sovereignty on them. And maybe it's worth just speaking a little bit about Ceuta and Melilla. They have been Spanish since the 16th century, so 1500 something. And actually, we took them from Portugal, who had them since the 15th century, at a time where Morocco didn't exist, because Morocco, as we know it, is a pretty old country. I'm not saying it's not old, but it was founded, let's say, in 1666 by the Alawite dynasty, which is basically the dynasty that is still in power today. So you see, because I heard a lot of stupid comments about colonialism and stuff. Well, if we have to give back Ceuta and Melilla, then we will give it back to the Portuguese, by the way. And so you see, it's a very old story. And so here we are speaking about migration, but the real background is geopolitical.
Just to continue what you're saying, it was also Christian and part of, if you want, Hispania before the 8th century Islamic conquest. So when the Muslims started spreading over North Africa and they conquered, it was all Christian territory. When they reached Ceuta, it too was one of the final Christian bastions that was conquered. So really, that section has been much more Christian than it has been Islamic, actually, both before and after.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And then it's true that sometimes Muslims tend to forget that they are one of the most telling examples of colonialism that ever existed.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, please continue.
No, and so, the situation here is like, the spark is migration, okay, but the real background is this geopolitical situation whereby Morocco keeps on claiming sovereignty over those two enclaves. And your audience also should know, Raymond, that Spain now, and this is where the parallelism with 711 is actually relevant. Now Spain is in an incredible state of vulnerability. Nothing works in my country now. Okay, we are still, the level of life is very good. People are happy. They work less and less. They enjoy life. Spanish people know how to do that. We just won the World Cup. Fine. But apart from that, this country is now in a situation of vulnerability like it has never been in the last decades. We have no geopolitical friends because of our very leftist, far left government. We are not in good terms with the United States. We're not in good terms with Israel. We are not in good terms now even with some of the colleagues of the European Union, because on the field of migration, my prime minister, that I really dislike, by the way, Mr. Pedro Sanchez, cannot hold the border properly. And that's also a problem for the other countries of the European Union. And look at Spain now. We are old. We are not very productive. We have basically a government that wasn't able to vote a budget for 4 years. We have a government that is even more important, that is ruling the country with all the enemies of the country, all the separatists. We have problems of separatism in Spain. And who is approving the few legislations that we still have that this parliament can approve? The people who want Spain to disappear. This is the political reality. And so, yes, it looks like 711 when the Muslims, started to conquer the Iberic Peninsula. It reminds me of that. In that time, it was the Visigoth, actually the last Visigoth king, his name like me, Rodrigo,
Yeah.
and he was a coward. He was somebody who indeed didn't do the job, was probably enjoying a very nice life in the court, but he got, basically, he lost his country, and it took quite a few centuries to conquer it back.
You know, the parallels are really more eerie than than might be at first discerned. And you know, just for the record, I'd like to give a quick recap of that Islamic conquest for whoever's watching and who doesn't know what we're talking about, because it's very relevant and it helps to understand the continuity. So what we're talking about is that the Islam, Spain, of course, was Christian before in the 8th century and for many centuries before that, and then Islam, as I was pointing out, had swept through North Africa, which was all Christian, conquered it. Syria, of course, also Christian, the Holy Land, Egypt, all the way to Morocco, to give it, or as in Arabic, Maghreb. And Ceuta was conquered. It was one of the very, very final bastions. So was Carthage. We forgot about Carthage. Was burned to the ground completely by the Muslims, I think, in the 680s. Around then. And 709, this particular enclave we're talking about, which was part of Hispania, it was a Christian region, was also conquered, and from there it became a launching point for the conquest of Spain. So it began in 711. By 712, most of Spain was conquered. Rodrigo is talking about the last Visigothic king of the same name, Rodrigo, who went to the Battle of Guadalete in 711, and he died there. Yeah, he was killed there. And it's interesting because depending on which version you go with, apparently this invasion, the historic one we're talking about in 711, was facilitated by a traitor. And sometimes he's known as Julian, Count Julian.
Don Julian.
Yes,
exactly.
Don
Yeah.
Okay, so we even have the same elements. Because I know we're going to be talking about treachery and politicians who are basically enabling this. And even back then, there was we know of at least one who did help them. And I think, according to the story, he gave the boats, or gave a lot more boats to the Moors, the Arabs from North Africa under Tariq. So anyway, they conquer, and the last king is killed. Islam overflows the Spains, as it was known, and finally, and then you have the resistance. It goes up in the mountains, northwest quadrant of Spain, Asturias, Paleo.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, and this becomes the beginning of the resistance, and then for century after century, you have constant warfare, reconquista, and jihads back and forth. And the Christians are constantly moving slowly down south. The watershed moment is the conquest of Toledo, 1085. That's kind of like, it becomes a big deal. And jihadist dynasties come from Africa, the Almohads, and then or the Almoravids before them, and then the Almohads.
Both, yeah. Correct.
And then others. And so the reason I want to explain all this is it took something like 800 years of warfare in Spain to get Islam out, and constant atrocities and bloodshed, and so okay, so that happens, and it's not even it's hundreds of years. So 711, I think you can give me a better date. 1492 is the date that is often, this is when the Moors are kicked out, but I know it even goes into at least the 16th, and some say the 17th century. You have the Moriscos and all sorts of things.
Correct, you're right.
Yeah. So we're talking about a millennium, okay, 1,000-year struggle. And it's amazing to me that it's happening again. And the Muslims from North Africa are using the same tactics in the sources. And I quote a lot of them. I was actually looking it up. I was reading about it in my book, Sword and the Scimitar. I have a whole chapter about the Reconquista. And it actually talks about how the Muslims, once they saw how beautiful Spain was, anything they could grab, even a tree bark, they would jump on, and just hordes of them in the water across that very little strip. And it's exactly what we see in these videos. The only difference, of course, is, the king fought and he died. But here, this is where you can come in and explain to me, what are the politicians doing? Are they doing everything possible to preserve, Spain and its culture and its heritage? Or are they all a bunch of Count Julians?
They are a bunch of Don Julianes, definitely. They are doing the exact opposite, and especially the prime minister. Again, today, I mean, the prime minister we have is like a biblical plague. I mean, I'd rather
So
have Joe Biden.
explain to us what he's doing.
Yes.
That's like,
Well,
yeah.
first you have to understand that now Spain is like like caught in like a poly-crisis scenario.
Mhm.
The first one is corruption. So just to give you some hints, the wife of the prime minister is indicted. The brother of the prime minister is indicted. The former right hand of the prime minister is in jail. The guy who replaced this right hand was also in jail and is also indicted. We are speaking also about the Socialist Party, like paid some like thugs in order to, spread like fake news and calumnies, about the policemen and the judges that were investigating the family of the prime minister. We're speaking about the bosses of the Spanish police trying to sabotage the investigations of their own people against the prime minister. So we are speaking about a government that can be objectively compared to a mafia. The Spanish government today,
I was going
it
to
is a
say, it
mafia.
sounds like you're describing a mafia, right? Yeah.
Yes, it is a mafia. It is a mafia, and thank God we still have a few good men in Spain, mostly judges and some policemen and some journalists as well who did the job. Otherwise, under the eyes of this European Union that is so virtuous and was always bashing all the conservative governments like Hungary or Poland when those countries were conservatives, in Spain, nothing happens. Raymond, no later than 3 days ago, he was giving a pardon just to corrupted politicians. So you have corrupted politicians pardoning corrupted politicians. This is where we are now. And again, I'm sure that something like that happened as well with the Visigoths, back in 711.
Yeah.
And so again, this parallelism is relevant, is absolutely relevant. Also, again, let's come back to what I mentioned before. What is the Spanish government? It's a coalition of parties. And this coalition is, attention, watch out, this is interesting, the Socialist Party. So let's say Democrats. Then you have the extreme left. Then you have also the Catalan separatists, both left and right. You also have the Basque separatists, including the former terrorists. So it means today that one of the guys who pressed the button to adopt a legislation in Spain and that is part of this coalition is somebody who was sentenced for terrorism because he used to kidnap politicians like 35 years ago. And those guys, at some point, they put on their list for the regional elections murderers, people who had blood on their hands. And so again, think about it. I mean, who are like how can you compare it for an American audience? Imagine that you have a strong independentist party in Texas. And imagine that this independentist party of Texas is the kingmaker of American politics. Would you be reassured? Or would you consider indeed that this American president who is prostituting itself to the point of ruling with a party that wants the destruction of the United States, this is the scenario that we have in Spain since already 8 years. Apart from that, they are totally untalented for power and for managing a country. They don't do it. As we speak now, Spain has like disastrous fires. Spain recently also had some floods that, where not 250 people died for the flood in Spain. Remember also that last year we were the first country in the Western world to have a total blackout. So for 12 hours, there was no electricity in the country. No electricity because we had too much renewable energy on the grid. So just out of ideology. So I know that in the US, you are very familiar with wokeism. You are even in a post-wokeism moment, and I congratulate you for that. But if you are looking for woke examples in the Western world, you have Canada, for example, but you also have Spain. Spain is not lagging behind. Spain is a country where you have more dogs than children, where you have legislation that protects the dogs, like as if they were like children. I mean, for example, you take them to a supermarket and you leave your dog, leashed at the exit of the supermarket, you can be fined for that, Raymond. And in the meantime, we have the lowest natality rate in Europe. After Malta, we are at 1.1. Now in Spain, it means that we have less babies that we used to have during the Civil War.
Wow.
Can you imagine? And so this is the reality of Spain today. Otherwise, it's true that if you walk on the street, you will see a lot of people in the bars, in the restaurants. They seem happy and stuff. But this is just the facade. Behind, you have a deeply old and sick country. And again, one that has been ruled for 8 years already by this man who is not only the head of this criminal mafia, but somebody who reminds me as well of Nero. You know, like this picture, I don't know if it's true or not, but of Nero playing the lira while Rome is on fire. This is, I think, a good metaphor for today's Spain. And Nero is Pedro Sanchez.
Okay, so you brought up a really good point. A lot of people who don't know Spain, haven't visited Spain, may have a sort of stereotypical idea in their mind, which is this, that you've described essentially a very wokist, progressive, leftist government. And I would think probably most people don't even get that, because we associate that more with Northwestern Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, UK, and maybe I'll stop saying we. I'm associating. I'll say myself. I had an idea that Spain and Italy, like the Catholic countries, I think, or I thought that the governments are, just as woke and just as progressive, but that the people are a little more traditional and a little more, down to earth and a little more, not so secularized. Okay. But from the way you're describing it, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the case? Or is your average Spaniard just as woke as your, I don't know, average German? Or is it mostly the government? It's a top-down enforcement and the people feel it. I don't know. Tell me.
It's a successful top-down enforcement. After the death of Franco, culturally speaking, the country became very, very much more liberal. And in the last 20 years, indeed, it has been like a relentless like imposition, top-down imposition, on those identity politics, especially feminism. This is the one that really destroyed most of the country. Today in Spain, since 20 years, we have legislation that basically don't give the same rights to men and to women. They give more right to women in terms, for example, of domestic abuse. If a wife calls the police, then directly the husband is taken into custody, but the opposite is not true. And also the country, indeed, I would say, is divided. So you still have a stronghold of conservatism. You still have a cultural conservatism. It's important. Villages in Spain are alive in summer. You have traditions, you have folklore. You still have the most beautiful Catholic processions you can see in the world. So it's not a country that is totally dead from a folkloric point of view, but from a political and ideological one, yes. And it's a country that has been divided for already 2 centuries. We often speak about the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939. But if you look at the history of Spain in the 19th century, once we lost our empire, because at some point, again, we were the superpower in the world, this tiny country conquered half of the planet and actually civilized half of the planet and mixed with half of the planet. I mean, today, Mexicans, Peruvians, Argentinians are the fruit of of a mix. We came there, and the first thing we did was to marry their women. So it's a beautiful story, the Spanish Empire. I think maybe one day we can also speak about it. But the 19th century was terrible for Spain, and it was basically a succession of civil wars, and civil wars along ideological lines. So already, the ideas of the French Revolution were very present in the 19th century in Spain. Then we had the big civil war, and 36-39, terrible war. Then we had the dictatorship with also some positive aspects. That also must be said of Franco. And after Franco, we had a huge reconciliation. The 2 Spains, as we call them, las dos Españas, the 2 Spains, made peace. They really made an historical reconciliation. And what happened is that people like Pedro Sanchez and the former socialist people tried to kill this reconciliation. And then, fortunately, they are managing. And again, today Spain is a very divided country among ideological lines and among political lines, and it's very sad.
Is there because I still have that old paradigm in my head: northern Spain, Christian Reconquista, southern Spain, Muslim. Is there still any kind of division geographically where you can say there's portions of Spain that's much more conservative and others that are more woke?
Maybe, but it's actually the opposite. The south of Spain is more Catholic, and the south of Spain is more
Interesting.
conservative. The most beautiful processions that I mentioned, in Spain during the Holy Week. So from basically like a couple of days before Good Friday and Maundy Thursday until the Sunday of Resurrection Sunday, so Easter Sunday, you have a lot of processions, and believe me, they're the most beautiful you can see in the world. It's moving, it's breathtaking. And they happen not only in the south, but mostly in the south. And actually, the wokest regions in Spain are the two separatist ones, Catalonia, Barcelona is, and the Basque country, which is a tiny little region, but that has a lot of influence because they have a glorious history with Spain, within Spain, and also because since 1 century they have these separatist tendencies. Very small. I mean, we're speaking about a region of, I think, 2 million people that is now, again, very woke. But, the ironic thing about those two separatist regions is that now they're totally infested by illegal migration. So for years, they kicked out the Spaniards, sometimes with violence, like in the Basque country, with terrorism. They used to kill parents, children. I mean, this is the reality of the Basque terrorism that we had until a couple of, 20 years ago. And now they're totally flooded with illegal migrants. And so their own future now is very much at stake because those are the two regions, together with Ceuta as well, where you have the biggest share of illegal migrants. Ironies of history.
That's poetic justice, I suppose. Can you? I mean, there's separate countries, of course, but can you tell us how all of this plays, or what is Portugal like politically? Is it also woke? Is it having these issues as well, or is there a difference?
It's a little different, but not so much. I mean, Portugal is a different country. Of course, we are like cousins, if not brothers. We were one single country for centuries as well, and now we are enjoying the best relationships ever. We speak a similar language. We have a very similar culture. In terms of migration, they also have problems. So it's not since 30 years like in Spain, it's not since 60 years like France, but it's more or less since 10 years, 10, 15 years. But in a city like Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, you feel it. And it's not only the former Portuguese colonies like Angola or Mozambique. It's not only like the cousins from Brazil. It's also, for example, a lot of migrants from Pakistan. You have quite a lot. And so in Lisbon, you feel it. What is the difference between Portugal and Spain? Portugal doesn't have any type of separatism problem, not at all. And also Portugal is a country that recently, has a conservative party that 7 years ago didn't exist and now is polling at 22, 23%. So a big success. And they managed to influence the political agenda. So for example, in Portugal, they adopted recently a legislation prohibiting the burqa. And in Spain, that didn't happen. And so Portugal is doing better, I would say. But of course, it's not like a country that doesn't have those problems of migration neither. Politically, they're a bit more stable, but a lot of things are also shaking there, I would say. But Spain is in a worse position. And of course, France is in a worse position than Spain. So the worst countries, those that are more impacted by illegal migration, are the classics that you already know: France, Belgium, Sweden, the UK, obviously, Germany. So Spain is in a gray zone. Portugal is in a grayish, whitish zone. And the other ones are definitely in the black zone.
Okay, thanks for that detour about Portugal. But so back to what we were talking about, the people of Spain. So, okay, putting cultural aside, conservatism, etc., the way you were describing the Spanish government, the mafia, essentially, is this common knowledge? Do the people of Spain feel, would they agree with you, or are they, to what degree do they understand what you described? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, are they actually voting for this, or are these mafia types coming into power even through corruption and possibly fraudulent elections? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I have some crispy stories about fraudulent elections and linked to migration as well. Linked to migration, because what we saw in Ceuta, has some second thoughts about elections. I'm going to tell you about that. If tomorrow you have elections in Spain, probably you will have a coalition, a right-wing coalition will win. So a coalition between the center-right, the equivalence of the rhinos, Republicans just in names, or conservatives just in names of Spain, called the Popular Party, the Partido Popular, and then a real conservative party called Vox, which is really leading the narrative on migration. That's if we had elections tomorrow, this is what will happen. But then comes your very interesting question: if the elections are not rigged, well, let's see, because you know that in Spain, Pedro Sanchez, this infamous Pedro Sanchez, regularized 1.2 million migrants a couple of weeks ago. 1.2. He initially said, it will only be 500,000, which is a lot. But at the end, it was 1.2 million. Those are the estimates of the police. And by the way, those guys, once they are regularized, they are also entitled to family reunification. So they can bring wives, kids, even in some cases, the parents.
So 1.2 million really means something like at least 3 or 4.
Let's say 3, just to be nice and to be prudent. But it's 3 in a country of 47 million people with no natality, basically. And can those guys vote next year? No, they cannot. They cannot, because it takes 2-3 years to get the Spanish citizenship. But in the next elections in 2031, they will be able to vote if they are still in Spain, because some of them are going to move to other countries. That's why the EU is so upset with Pedro Sanchez. But they will be able to vote. And in Spain, the electoral system is divided by provinces. And actually, with a handful of votes that are placed in the correct province, you can get a seat that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And by the way, what is Mr. Sanchez going to do for the next elections in 2027? Well, based on history as well. I mean, here we are at the crossroad of rigged elections, history, and migration. So he's giving now the citizenship to 2.4 million South Americans on the basis of a legislation that, claims that the descendants of the refugees who fled the Spanish Civil War, so basically the losers, the red people, if you like, that there is a legislation in Spain that now their grandchildren are entitled to the Spanish citizenship. I don't really like the idea, but okay, why not? If you really prove it, that your grandfather left Spain because of the war, and then you want to become Spanish, 80 years later. But that's only a pretext, because it's giving basically the nationality to almost, everyone asking for it. And at the end of the day, 2.4 million people already requested it. 500,000 have already been regularized. And this is for citizenship, Raymond. So those persons who never set a foot in Spain, who never paid a single tax in Spain, will be able to vote in whenever he calls the election, let's say spring 2027. And that can have an impact. It can have an impact. So if tomorrow you have fair elections in Spain, it is very likely that you will have a right-wing coalition. But will Mr. Sanchez, Don Julian 2.0 allow for that? That's a fair question mark, especially since there are some precedents already. Last elections that we had in Spain, when this man called them? He called them on the 23rd of July, 2023. So when half of Spain is already on holidays. What was the consequence? That you had more mail ballots than you ever had in Spain. Should I tell you something about May ballots, or in the US you are pretty familiar with that already?
We're
No, I
familiar, but
shouldn't
yeah.
elaborate with that. No, so
Yeah.
this is what happened. Imagine that calling elections, I don't know, on the day of Thanksgiving, on the day of Christmas. This is basically what he did. So he's a cheater.
So this is, it's the same story over and over in every country, right? In Europe, in the West in general, right? It's the United States, Canada, Australia. What, what is the game plan? What is it? Is it just to flood Western nations, which are already small demographically, population wise, to just flood them with people from the third world, primarily Muslims, the historic, arch rival of the West? I mean, is this intentional? What is it just to get votes? Is that it? Is it just cynicism?
But yeah,
I'm going to bring these people so they can vote for me and I stay in power? Or how do you analyze it?
in the short term, is definitely votes. I mean, this is in the agenda of the left-wing parties in Europe for 30 years already. I could show you papers of a French think tank, very influential think tank called Terra Nova, so the official left-wing think tank in France, saying that, yeah, we have to, the future of the left is that the migrants will vote for us. And if not the working class, we should get rid of the working class. What matters are the migrants. And today, look at France. Sorry to come back to France, but it's an interesting example. I mean, the extreme left today, the candidate of the extreme left, who is polling at 18%. A guy, very dangerous person called Jean-Luc Mélenchon. I mean, his party, who is a seditious party, I mean, gets the vote of 75% of the Muslims. So 75% of the Muslims vote for the extreme left today in France. So in the short run, it's obviously for the votes. In the long run, Raymond, we have to agree that, what is at the end, the common denominator of wokeism is the self-loathing. They hate their own culture. Those are like teenagers, like when you're 15, you think that your parents are crap. They are the worst in the school and everything.
Yeah.
Well, the whole West has been captured by the pre-teen, like a teenager thinking. It's teen thinking when you think about it. And so at the end, this self-loathing, this thirst to deconstruct everything except themselves, by the way. I would be very happy if Judith Butler would deconstruct herself, but she doesn't. And at the end, in the long run, indeed, their dream is to have a universal society where nationalities, where roots do not matter. There is a French thinker, one of those guys from the crazy French theory, those deconstructivists, called Gilles Deleuze. But he has a sentence. I don't like him, of course, and it's impossible to read. It's very verbose, very boring. But he had a sentence that really defines the left and the right. He says, we, the leftists, we first look at the sky and then we look at our feet. And that's true. And we conservatives, I'm conservative in case people didn't have noticed before, we first look at our feet, our communities, our roots, and then we elevate our vision until maybe someday we also look at the universal thing. So a real leftist, they first think about the universe, and the last thing they think about is their families, their community, their roots. They don't like it. They don't like their history. They also want to reinvent the world. They think that they are the first generation that can do a tabula rasa. They think that a tradition is something that must be broken just because it's a tradition. And they just think that they can they can reset the world, because they were born and they're smarter than the others. They don't look at the past. And when you know it much better than me, you are an accomplished historian. When you don't look at the past, you know perfectly what happens.
Yeah, the 2 points, you gave the short term, why they do it, and then the long term. And the short term, of course, is, like you said, election is votes, just to be in power. And but also the long term you give, which is, the contempt for their own heritage, etc. And it explains why both of them work hand in hand, because when you first pointed out that they're doing it just for elections, the thought that came into my mind is these people are traitors, right? I mean, imagine you're a person, a politician who supposedly is seeking office to help his nation, and what you do is you bring your first goal, you're wed to and you're determined to do, is to bring in other people to replace those people because you're sure the other people, in this case Muslims from Africa, will vote for you, even though you know that group, that element that you're bringing in is going to terrorize, is going to kill, is going to stab, is going to bomb, is going to economically exploit the nation. Okay, so this, I think everyone, every Western person, every European, American, you need to understand this is what drives these politicians, just staying in power. And that's why they are empowering, let's say, Muslims in this case, okay, or migrants. But then the other aspect, which you said, which of course is true, this self-loathing, this self-hatred. I mean, so what's the end game? The culmination is what this means. I'm trying to put this in plain language to normal, people who don't understand. What this means is you are led, the people who make rules for you and laws are basically trying to destroy your country, in case you didn't get it, because all they care about is getting what they can get, power and money and whatever, influence. And B, with that, they want to destroy your nation. And it's just amazing, because this is where we're at, not just with Spain, but just everywhere in Europe. And it's
absolutely. Let me give you an historical example about the Reconquista. You have quite a few Spanish intellectuals, historians, that say that the Reconquista basically was something like a Islamophobic genocide.
That's just
can you imagine? So,
and these are Spanish historians.
Yeah, absolutely, or Spanish politicians. And in the south of Spain, for example, in Andalusia, the father of Andalusia is a writer from the late 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. He's really idolized by almost all the parties, and this guy converted to Islam and wanted an independent Muslim Andalusia. And still today, is seen as like the father of Andalusia. His name is Blas Infante. I'm not saying he was a bad writer, but I'm saying that he was a dangerous Muslim fanatic. And even the mainstream governments, the mainstream parties are, paying tribute to this man. So, what can you do with a generation of politicians who had no idea about their history? And no sense of the roots, and who are droning into diplomas. They went to, it's exactly like in your Ivy League people today. What a paradox, Raymond. But can we say that the most stupid elite you ever had is the one producing the most expensive universities in the world? And some people pay $80,000 or $90,000 a year to learn about what? About gender studies and crap like that? Really?
I wish it was just, that they don't know their history, but they're often taught, and then they teach the exact opposite of history. So, and this is why, Spain to me is always an amazing kind of a paradigmatic example, because, okay, let's say Finland doesn't understand Islamic migration. Okay, that makes sense. They don't have a history, really. Well, maybe they do, actually. Mongol Tatars, Muslim Mongols actually enslaved them. But okay, let's say I don't know. Let's say somewhere in northern Norway, they don't have exact history. Iceland does, because they were raided and enslaved as well. But Spain, as I always say, is a microcosm of just continuous century after century of wars. And I just don't and this is what we're talking about. The reason all of this is happening, and the reason that these politicians can do what they do, is because they've completely destroyed history and rebuilt a fake one. The true history is you had Muslim invaders enter Spain committing atrocities. This is what's recorded in both Christian and Muslim Arabic sources. And this continues century after century. And the Christians finally win, as we were pointing out. And then their descendants see them as heroes. They've liberated our land. And their descendants, June 25th, what do we... I'm sorry, was it July 25th? I think was Santa Matamoros' feast day.
Santiago, yes.
Yeah. And
my son is called Santiago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And this, for who doesn't know, is Saint James the Elder in Spanish. Santiago Matamoros, the Moor slayer. So basically, Spain's patron saint is depicted as on a horse fighting and killing Moors to get them out of Spain. Okay, so you have this rich, long tradition, war, and then and people are happy about it. Battles like Las Navas de Tolosa was actually, I think, part of the liturgical
Absolutely. In
calendar.
12, in in 1212, that was
Yeah,
the turning point actually.
yeah, because that was the whole
I'm
history of
impressed that you
Spain.
know all those details, Raymond. I'm impressed.
Well,
Now, as
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tolosa,
I write about
congratulations.
it. I have a whole chapter about Las Navas de Tolosa here, just a whole chapter. It's because it's one of
Impressive.
the most. It's the decisive battle, right, of the Reconquista,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So this whole history, and then so this is why I'm saying it's one thing if you're an American, you don't understand about Islam or whatever, but Spaniards, your whole history is soaked in blood, and now not only have they forgotten it, but they've twisted it. So it's you're the bad guy, you're the racist, you're the Islamophobe, you're the
Yeah.
one who owes them. And at the same time, they're still doing the same thing, like we just saw at Ceuta, with just people. It's just
Yeah.
it's almost I don't know how to I don't it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. It is. It is. What happens with the Muslim heritage in Spain is that I must admit that it's beautiful. Muslims did not always leave a beautiful cultural heritage every time they colonized. For example, in Hungary, the place where I live now, it was occupied 250 years by Turks, and they didn't leave much. And in Spain, it's not the case. At some point, you had like this golden age of Islam actually happened in Spain, and that's why so many Muslims today are so nostalgic, and they still call the south of my country Al Andalus, with the Arabic name, and that's why they would like to reconquer it. Huh? But I must admit, it's beautiful. And then, of course, because you have this very shallow. Raymond, are you a family-friendly show? Can I just say goodbye to my little daughter
Yeah,
who is
of
going to bed?
course. Yeah, yes, of course.
Ya está, bichito.
That's very
Adios.
sweet.
And so the thing is that you have also this very shallow romantic vision of of diversity. This virus of diversity. Some people see it in the Islamic Spain. Oh, it was a beautiful land with beautiful palaces where Muslim, Jews, and Christians lived in harmony. But that's bullshit. Sorry, this is not true. This is absolutely not true. I mean, you have Christians that wear dhimis. Please, you are better placed than me to explain what a dhimi is. But they were like second-class citizens. So were the Jews as well. So again, I mean, it's okay, fine. They were on the same territory for centuries. But you had a first-class and second-class citizens. And you better be a first-class citizen. It was much more fun, of course.
And this is the grand point of the Golden Age. I agree with you. They made beautiful architecture and things of that nature. But the problem is people think that, a civilization that builds architecture or has literature or is literate, which of course the Arab the Cordoban Umayyad dynasty was in the Golden Age. The assumption is if they had that, then they must have been, progressive, open-minded, et cetera, et cetera. But all you have to do is look at a country, like or places like Dubai or these Gulf states that have magnificent architecture and massive skyscrapers, and you look at them and they're very impressive. But yeah, look at the culture, and they live by Sharia, and they whip people, and they amputate hands, and they kill apostates. So just because you have architecture or art, even, it does. You have to remember that at that moment, the so-called Golden Age, like you said, yeah, it's Jews and Christians are second-class dhimmis. They're being abused. Think about this: at the height of the Golden Age, here's one story most people are not aware of. At the height of the Golden Age, you probably know them, the Martyrs of Cordoba, which is something like 50+ Christians who basically the Caliphate executed in the most horrific ways. They skinned them alive, boiled them, decapitated them, crucified them, because they blasphemed against Muhammad or they were coerced into Islam and then they wanted to go back to Christianity. So that is the Golden Age. That was the culture that governed the Golden Age. So I just wish people would understand that just because a civilization has material wealth, architecture, art, whatever, does not mean that the culture was progressive or egalitarian in a Western sense. And I think that's the key. Yeah.
No, and also speaking about self-loathing, the same people who call the Reconquista an Islamophobic genocide, are also the ones that are totally, discrediting the Spanish Empire. When actually the Spanish Empire in South America, in many ways, was the most progressive and the most human empire you ever had. And the first thing we did was to marry them. No slavery. It was banned since basically the beginning of the 16th century.
Yeah.
So basically a couple of years before arriving, they were again. Even when we left, the Spaniards left. I mean, when those countries became independent, you had many more autochthonous people than you found them. Look at the Aztecs. The Aztecs were literally like the Mesoamerican Nazis. I mean, they were into human sacrifices all the time, and so we free them from this totalitarian regime, what we will qualify today as a totalitarian regime, and yet this intellectual left, they hate them so much that when we reconquer our territory, it's bad. When we found an empire, it's everything that the Spaniards do and did is bad. Everything is bad, and everyone else is better than us. And in Spain is a country with a very low self-esteem, which is also counterintuitive because we are one of the most touristic countries in the world. We are 47 million people, and in summer, basically, you have twice as many tourists as Spaniards. Everyone comes to our country because, the lifestyle is fantastic, the weather, the food, and all those things. And a lot of people come to Spain and say, wow, it's a beautiful country. I would like to stay here. And then you only have intellectual left elite telling you that your country is rubbish, that everything you did is bad, and things like that. And it's true that what gives me hope, Raymond, is that the new generations are totally different. So if only people under 30 years old, under 30 years will vote in Spain, the political results will be very different. And so, this woke cult produces actually a conservative rebellion. And that's good news.
It's a backlash. I agree. And you're absolutely right. We're talking about the Reconquista and how it's being demonized and undermined, but you're right. The Spanish Empire and everything it did. So, and this hits closer to home in America, in the person of Christopher Columbus. Of course, he's Italian, but he was, sponsored by Spain, and he founded America. And of course, he was a hero in America, and we still have Columbus Day. But there's a lot of the woke type who are out demonizing him, demonizing, the Spanish Empire. And in their stead, you were pointing out the Aztecs were like the Nazis. Well, yeah. So they always like to present the natives, okay, as these wonderful, peaceful people. And of course, the Europeans, the Spaniards, the Christians are monsters who came and engaged in genocide. And they never point out that, well, a lot of the natives were killing each other too, okay, and in pretty atrocious ways. The Aztecs pull human sacrifice, but really horrific ways. You never get that, okay? They're always like, we have a Disney movie, Pocahontas.
Exactly. And think about it. How many Spaniards made it to Mexico at the beginning? Mexico didn't exist, by the way, to this part of South America or Central America. It was something like 600 people. How can 600 people defeat an empire? Well, they don't have superpowers. It's not a Marvel movie. They just did it because they had an alliance with all the oppressed people. Basically, what happened in what today is Mexico is like Aztecs, were oppressing, I don't know how many other ethnicities. The Spaniards came, 600 Spaniards came and said, let's make an alliance with them to free them. And at the end, who made the conquest of America? The locals against the Aztecs. Aztecs were terrible. Incas were not that terrible. We have to make the difference as well. But Aztecs were terrible. Everyone was happy to get rid of them, and they did it with the help of the Spaniards. 600 people cannot conquer an empire if they are not backed by 90% of the population, who was oppressed, basically. And let me just give you an example. You know what is the first language in the world that had its own grammar? I mean, a codified grammar. It was Spanish. And you know what language was the second? It was Nahuatl. Nahuatl is the language of the Aztecs. So it means that the Spaniards codified, the friars, mostly the monks, the Franciscans codified the language of the Aztecs far before the English language had its own grammar. Can you call that a genocide?
So I think this entire conversation is reminding me again why I'm so obsessed with history and the idea that so much of this wokeism and leftism, whatever we want to call it, its strongest strength is the fact that it subverts history, okay, and it tears people apart from their heritage, and it makes them
Oh yeah,
hate their heritage. Okay, because when
yeah,
I look at the world, and everyone has histories and heritages and etc., of course, the West and Europe, Spain, elsewhere, yeah, they have their bad sides. But what they've done is, but they also have their very good sides, which we're talking about right now, for
yeah,
example. And what they've done is they've completely erased the good side, completely exploited, exaggerated the bad side, and then the best part is, then when it comes to the histories of all the other peoples, they've completely made them all look good, even though in reality, if
yeah,
you were objective and you evaluated every civilization's history, you will find, of course, okay, they all have good and bad, but you're going to find a lot of the non-Western, non-European, non-Christian were more bad, okay, objectively speaking, okay. And this is why, who abolished slavery? It wasn't Muslims. They were
exactly.
actually, yeah,
Slavery is the best example.
yeah,
Yeah,
who abolished it? It was Europeans, it was Christians. But who today,
yeah,
if I say the word slavery, is most blamed for it?
yeah,
Europeans and Christians. Is it so?
exactly.
Nobody wants to acknowledge that the whole world was doing this on a massive scale, especially
Hmm.
Muslims. And I think, and I believe all this is by design, this subversion of history, because that's the only way you can cause people themselves to engage in the self-loathing you're talking about.
Yeah,
Because if you feel
exactly.
like your forefathers were all monsters and racists and a bunch of Hitlers running around, well, then you have to
Yeah,
renounce them, and you have to change. You have to be different. You have to be progressive. So this is
exactly.
the ultimate weapon they've been
Yeah,
using.
and exactly, and it's very perverse because Raymond, your country, your community should be like your family. When you're a child, you idealize it, you love it unconditionally, and then you start growing up and you discover that your parents are not as perfect as you thought. Then you become a teenager, and then you become even difficult. But then at some point, you become an adult again, and you learn how to love them with their dark sides and also their good sides. But you love them, and this is on what this is a solid laying foundation to build something positive and
Mhm.
something solid. Imagine just taking this parallelism that you teach the young kids, the children, like my daughter who is 8 years old, that we are teaching her 24/7 that her parents are bad, that his father is this, her father is this, her mother is that. And at the end, she's going to be totally deranged, totally unsettled. By the time she becomes an adult, she will not have built anything. And this is exactly what the left is, this wokeism, this deconstructivism is trying to do with our own civilization. Learn to appreciate your roots. Acknowledge as well the dark aspects, the less glorious aspects. In our families, we all have
Mhm.
ancestors like that. We all have default. Nobody's perfect. But imagine that by the time you are 30 years old, you look back and the only thing they taught you about your parents and grandparents is filth. They were horrible. They never did anything
They
good.
killed
Are you
everyone around
sure?
us.
They killed everyone around us. When actually, and you're saying that while you are living in a beautiful house with
Yeah.
beautiful paintings and things like that, how ungrateful and bloody narcissist one has to be. And I think here is the problem of prosperity. We are the first, like the last 50, 60 years, we are diving in prosperity. And to a large extent, that also made the West not only the lack of resilience, but simply very stupid.
I really like that analogy you give of family, and it's dark side, it's good side, and you grow up and you get older, and you use the teenage rebellious years, but then you're an adult and you understand it all. So okay, I know you need to get going, but a final question
No,
is,
it's okay. We have a bit of time.
oh, we do, okay, good, okay. One question I was thinking of when you were talking is, and you mentioned it, you sort of answered it. You said prosperity is one of the reasons that people can afford to think this way. But this is what has always mind boggled to me, because I look at different civilizations. It's very unnatural to do what's being done, which is to force you to hate your own ancestors. If I look in the Muslim
Absolutely.
world, if I look in India, Hindu civilization, Chinese, Japanese, any civilization you look at, whatever their ancestors might have been monsters, they are going to venerate them, and you better not talk bad about them.
And good for them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. I don't. I'm happy. That is natural. I mean, that is normal. Is what I'm trying to say. The normal thing is that my ancestors, good or bad, I'm going to defend them because they're part of my heritage. That's normal. Whether they're good or bad, we can argue that. But it's straight. So it's strange that the one civilization whose ancestors, of course, good and bad, but at least they're the ones who did everything that the world wants. Right. This is why everyone wants to go and live in the West. This is why everyone wants to have Western technology and Western, medicine, all of that. Right. They're the ones who did that. And yet it's that civilization that has somehow been taught to hate and despise and its ancestors. And that's what I don't get. In other words, this phenomenon doesn't exist in other civilizations. Why? And I know you said wealth. You said wealth, but Japan's wealthy, and there's other civilizations that have some wealth as well, and I just can't see them ever engaging in this self-hatred.
Well, I think the Asians are they also hate themselves in a way that, for example, they don't have children. In Japan or in South Korea, I mean, the level of the birth rates are even lower than in Spain, for example. So it's also a way, like not to care about your country anymore. But it's true that otherwise they don't fall into like this obscene self-loathing that we can find in the Ivy League campuses, or when you read the New York Times, for example, or that you find in the ceremony of the Olympics in France. You remember this outrageous and totally like ridiculous and obscene ceremony. It was pure self-loathing. I mean, the world is watching you, everyone is looking at you, and the only thing you can do is basically, with vulgarity, to laugh at to hate yourself in front of everyone. This is madness. This is sickness. Yeah. It's also true that the Western civilization has been built on self-criticism, on rationality and, on questioning a lot of things. And that took us very, very high. And this wokeism at the end is a very evil caricature of this self-criticism that is otherwise a good thing, I would say. Some philosophers argue that, well, wokeism, we already had that in the past, here and there. I don't really agree with them, because wokeism is now widespread and it was about to die, to kill our own civilization. Thank God, you in America, you invented it, but you also started to get rid of it. So thank you. But it's true. It's true
that it to you guys.
I mean, wokeism was a French virus that you guys made viral, but at the end you also found the antidote. But again, this self-criticism led also in European history to schisms between Catholics and Protestants, for example. And that was, when you think about it, it was a way to say, well, Protestantism was also a very harsh criticism of your past, with good reasons, but also sometimes exaggerated. And so I think it's within us. But I'm Catholic personally, but I have a lot of respect for Protestantism and reform, because intellectually it was grounded. But what is hopeless is that wokeism is the most cretinous ideology the West ever produced. It's the stupidest. It's the stupidest. I mean, in 1,000 years, we're going to look back and it will be like the lowest point of our civilization. How is it possible that people who build cathedrals 1,500 years later end up saying that a woman is a man and a man is a woman, with the pink hair and some piercings on the nose and covered in tattoo? I mean, if you want to hate yourself, do it well, at least.
One of the things that I think fuels this kind of thinking, there's this assumption that modern people have, and I think, which is, and again, if you understand history, it's a wrong assumption, but it's the assumption that whatever they did, the people of the past, including, of course, my ancestors and my people, was wrong, and they were stupid, right? So apparently, because we have cell phones and technology, which of course I didn't make them. We feel like we are so intelligent compared to the previous generations. And That's why, like you're saying, you can have this person with blue hair and an earring in their nose, and they feel
Mm,
so enlightened and advanced and elevated, because what did those people know back then? But if you actually ever
mm,
grab a book and see how those people thought, they're oftentimes like geniuses. I mean, you can go back to
yeah,
someone like Plato, let's say, or Aristotle. This is like we're
yeah,
talking, 2,500 years ago, almost, or whatever.
yeah.
And so I don't. It's just that idea is what fuels it again, and that it's another false idea. It is a cretin ideology, like you're saying. I completely agree with it. But I don't know. Is it? How does it have to? I think you're right about the point. The younger generations, and I don't know why the younger generations get it, because you would think that each generation is molding another generation,
Mm,
and if woke parents will of course undermine their children, but it does seem that the younger generation is better, and I'm not sure why,
mm.
but I'm happy they are, and I hope they continue. But how do you analyze it? How did the younger generation see through this without any help from anyone else? Because the older
Yeah.
generations are part of the problem.
Conservative is the new punk. And when you have been indoctrinated 24/7 since you are a child with stupid ideas, how couldn't you, rebel against that?
Yeah,
Because of course, rebellion is natural, is part of the
right.
human condition. But that much, again, I mean, you are 3, 4, and they started, or you already start having some rainbow flags in your classroom. Then imagine a man, especially white men, the white straight men. You are taught to hate yourself since you are 5 or 6 or 7. And I would say a large number of them will interiorize it, but the majority will say, come on, what is this nonsense? And they will actually do the opposite. And also
Right.
they will rediscover their roots again. When you have been raised in the hatred of your own history and stuff, and then you still have eyes, you have ears, and then you listen to a symphony of Mozart and you say, oh, this is like this rubbish culture that produced that. You look at the cathedral. How many cathedrals can just make you change your mind about it? In the
Yeah.
Western culture, and I would say Europe in particular, when you look at what we build, I still believe that we are the most beautiful continent in the world. Look at the paintings, look at the music, look at the culture we produce. And also, thank God you have a lot of people from abroad who are reminding us how great we were and how great we can be. How many people in Asia, in Africa are fascinated by our own culture? How
Yeah.
many Muslim Arabs tell us, but why? What are you doing, guys? Why are you accepting those illegal immigrants all the time? I would never do that in for example, in the Arab Emirates. You have a
Mhm.
very interesting people from the Emirates telling you, but are you crazy, France? Are you crazy, Belgium? Are you crazy, Sweden? We will never do that. We are Muslims and we will never accept that in our own country. Look at Central Asia. You know that a country like Turkmenistan, officially Muslim country, banned
Mhm.
the,
Hijab,
the veil,
the
the
veil. Yeah.
hijab,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank God we still have enlightened people outside our borders who are able to wake us up and to take us out from this stupid narcissism. Because at the end, the wokes are people who are just sick of of staring at their belly button. huh? And and at the end, some people sometimes say, "Wake up, guys! You are absolutely not as ugly as you think. You're actually super attractive."
It's
And you find
amazing
those
that
voices, yeah. And so I think it's
it's amazing that
again
other people have to say it. Yeah, go ahead, finish.
no, 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 no. I just I finished. Don't worry, but it's indeed other people have to tell us sometimes how worth we are.
And I do see your point about the younger generation, because so the older generation, let's say in America, we would call them, the boomer generation, especially, is where all this stuff starts. When the woke concepts, this is the time of the hippies, right? They were new, so that was the punk thing, to do.
Mm.
But now, when you're, if you're like the Gen Z, the younger generation, for example, and you grow up with this, and it's all you see, it gets very tiresome, especially then when
Yeah,
you find out, oh, there's something nice in my culture, in my heritage, in my religion, and then
yeah.
it awakens something in you. So okay, let's bring it back to the Ceuta. How do you pronounce it?
Ceuta.
Ceuta. Okay, yeah,
Ceuta.
it's like
Yeah.
okay, Ceuta. What practical significance will come out of this? How will this unfold? Is this just some wild kind of horde attack and then most of them left and that's the end of it, or is this sort of symbolic for something greater that might be in play?
It's the greatest migration storm I've ever seen. Even worse than in 2021 when Morocco did it on purpose to punish Spain for some political decisions. But Pedro Sanchez too, because of course, I mean, what I said about cretinous ideology applies very much to my current prime minister, who is extremely shallow. He might be smart, but certainly not intelligent. And so what's going to happen? The whole EU is very upset about that, upset at Pedro Sanchez. And
why are they upset? I thought the EU likes open borders, doesn't care.
Less and less, because they know that the vast majority of European citizens don't like it, and so now they're traumatized by the refugee crisis of 2015, and now you have stricter rules in the EU, and they want to apply them. And why are they upset? Because again, of this massive unilateral regularization of illegal migrants that Pedro Sanchez did a couple of months ago. And he didn't consult the others. And this has an impact on the other countries. First, because those regularized migrants can move to other countries. They can move to France. They can move to Sweden. Yes, not to look for a job, not to stay there, but they can move. And once they move, we know that they stay anyway illegally. So it has consequences, and also for the public opinions. If now Ceuta is the beginning of a new refugee crisis, then it means that in the next 2-3 years, the political shift in Europe will be massive, and everyone, the majority at least, will vote for conservative parties, because migration is the number one issue now in Europe by far. And so, so that's why. Yeah.
What I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how do you see what will Europe look like? Let's say 20-30 years from now. Based on current trends.
On current trends, I will be pessimistic about Western Europe, because if you combine the migration rates with the birth rate, you will reach a level of social conflict within the same territory. A lot of people theorize
UK, maybe Sweden, Germany,
UK, France, Sweden, Germany, France, Belgium, Netherlands.
Spain,
to a certain extent.
Spain is literally the westernmost country. Well, Portugal, but I don't know if it's ever considered Western. I don't know how that works.
When it comes to migration problems, we are lagging a little bit behind, thank God, compared to France, for example. Right. But you can have those problems also. And also, Spain is spared by another factor when it comes to migration, is that we have more migrants actually than in France, but most of them come from South America. And it's not the same, Raymond. It's not the same. People who speak your language.
Actually, this is a good point I'd like to ask you about, because I do know a lot of the migrants that come from Spain are not Muslims and they're from South America. So is it fair to say now, if comparing the South American migrants, or to put it more simply, the non-Muslim migrants compared to the Muslim migrants, is there a difference, or are they just all migrants?
I think the comparison is indeed with the South Americans, because South Americans are our cousins. I mean, we were the same country for 300 years. We speak the same language. We have a common religion as well. And so, of course, the integration is much easier, but 10,000 times even easier. And so the topic of cultural affinities is crucial to migration. I mean, if you bring people you get along with because you share a lot of things, is one thing. If you bring people who are also very respectable, but that are incompatible, and you bring them in thousands and hundreds of thousands, this is not going to work. And again, I'm not a universalist. I have respect for Islam in Islamic countries. And I don't think we should flood them with our stupid wokeism and things like that. We should leave them as they are. It's their right. It's just that our societies now, Western ideologies, Western history, and Muslim ideology and Muslim history are most of the time not compatible, especially when they come from Arab countries, from northern Arab countries. We have a bit of real Islam in Europe. If you look at Bosnia, Albania, for example, is not a country that is a Muslim country, and I think it's very European as well. But what the people from Ceuta, I can respect them. I respect Morocco. It's a country, a very old country with a very interesting history. I'm just saying that in large quantities, they are totally incompatible with the Spanish history and the Western history in general. So it doesn't make sense to bring them. Think about the Somalis. You have quite a few Somalis in Minnesota, for example, also in Michigan. Raymond, in Somalia, a lady who smiles is a prostitute. And you bring young people full of hormones to Sweden, the most feminist country in Europe, where ladies wear miniskirts even in winter. It cannot end up well. How stupid. Exactly. What could go wrong? And so this is the level that we have now. And so that's why, just to come back to my crystal ball, I see a lot of problems in Western Europe, less in Central and Eastern Europe, far less, because the problems of migration are really, really like non-existent. The only consolation I found is in history. France, Spain, other countries went through very tough times and they always survived so far. I hope it's going to be the case.
Okay. Well, time will tell. I hope so too. Okay, Rodrigo, thanks a lot for joining me. Any final thoughts,
pleasure.
any words, anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, nothing. Again, it's been a pleasure. Don't hesitate to follow me on Twitter, Rod Ballester. We will follow the crisis in Ceuta, because it's not going to finish tomorrow with a magic wand. And so don't hesitate to follow me there, Rod Ballester, on Twitter. And yes, otherwise, looking forward to speak about many of the things with you, the Spanish Empire. Hungary, of course, the situation in Hungary now is absolutely dramatic. We have an autocracy now since already 2 months here. And but otherwise, that's been a pleasure. And again, I'm very impressed by your knowledge of the Spanish history. It's impressive, Raymond. And it has been an honor being with all of you today.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I appreciate it. And we'll definitely have a lot more to talk about. And the final irony is, we first met and we did an interview in Budapest, and it came out, and I had nothing to do with this. I didn't know the exact date, but it came out literally the very day that this Ceuta thing began. So it came out 2 days ago. Very ironic. And I encourage everyone to go watch it, because we were actually speaking very much along the same lines like now, but we also got into other topics that would give context to this particular live stream. So at any rate, okay, thank you very much, Rodrigo. And
my pleasure. Thanks to you, Raymond.
Talk about other things. Take care.
Perfect. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. So that was Rodrigo. Be sure to follow him on Twitter. Good guy. You see, he's very smart. Knows his history, his politics, and what's going on with Spain. But he knows a lot about France as well and other European nations. So yeah, this Ceuta business. But let's see some of your super chats here. Okay, it's Lorraine, new member. Welcome. I released for all you members a members only video with Nisar Hassan. If you saw, it was a great interview I did with him. Nisar is the from Pakistan. He's UK born, but his heritage, he's Pakistani, and he became Christian, Kashmiri, I believe, and he became Christian and then was almost killed for it. So I released another lengthy clip for members only. So check it out if you are. Cruciform Crusade, you should collaborate with Nick Freitas on either his podcast or yours. He does the Making the Argument show and helped lead me to Christ. Okay, good. Thanks for letting me know. Welcome, Rhonda. Lupac, welcome. Larry, hi Raymond. I've seen you in debates online, but I haven't found any with Muhammad Tawhidi, who claims Islam is the religion of peace. Have you tried? I've actually met Muhammad Tawhidi at some conservative event, and so I thought he was like on the good side. We actually have some pictures together, and he seemed like a okay guy. I don't know what he says or what he's been talking about, but he was like at a CPAC conference, and people were touting him and saying, "No, this is like he's a reformer." Anyway, Alan, was this organized by a branch of the Brotherhood? You're talking about the Ceuta thing? I don't know. Qualqui. Agreeing with RB, which would be Rodrigo Ballester, who just spoke. July 16th is Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and I enjoyed seeing the procession with the Virgin through Malaya town to a nearby beach. Of course, she is the patron saint of mariners. Yeah. He was making a good point about, and it's true, I've heard this before, about Christianity, Catholicism, Catholic Christianity in Spain is very beautiful, and the processions are very moving, and the churches and so forth. So, yeah, it's amazing. And yet, here you have what we just discussed, right? Lies destroy lives. We should send the best of all peoples. That would be code for Muslims, because that's what Islam teaches Muslims. I think it's in the Quran. Muslims are the best of all peoples. We should send the best of all peoples from Western nations to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, etc. Then, after they've fixed those countries up, reconsider our immigration policies. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. Like, instead of bringing everyone to the West, why don't you, if you really care, help them there? Maybe develop some kind of business model, help them in a way so they develop their countries, and it would also help the West again through some sort of international trade. I don't know, but it doesn't always have to be I open my doors and you come flood in and terrorize me. Could be another way that you help people. 64 Trinity, 1,000 jewels, goat trophy. Okay. Don't know what that means. Lies destroy lives. You should have to be a citizen for at least 5 years before being allowed to vote. Yeah. Especially in the context that we were discussing, which is all these Western politicians are kowtowing and helping bring in migrants simply so that person votes for them, because that's what they do. Everyone who, if you're from another country or another religion, if you're not European, Christian, whatever, you come to the West, you always will vote left, even though you despise the left. That's the great irony, because everyone outside of the West is ultra conservative socially. So they're not leftist culturally is what I mean, but they will vote left because that's what serves their interests. And that's why these politicians, who are essentially traitors because they're destroying their countries simply so they can get a vote. It's just amazing. Titanium Grayson. Ray, I served a mission in North Spain in 95, 96. I greatly appreciate your insight to having this interview. Your guests like you are on point. Thanks, Titanium. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very keen on bringing in good guests like you've seen with Rodrigo, definitely great. Ralph Scholhammer also. And there's many others I hope to start bringing on to help fill in the gaps. Lies Destroy Lives is Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West, available in Spanish. I don't know. It might be, or it might be in the works. It's this book here. I was looking at it, comparing my notes, preparing for this, because it really is amazing what's happening in Spain, this Ceuta thing. There's actual, excerpts here. Let me see. I tried to pull one up. Let me see if I can just read it. If I can. No, I don't have it. Anyway, there's excerpts in that book of when the Muslims first invaded Spain. And it literally sounds like what you're seeing. Just masses and hordes jumping on anything they could find, any makeshift boats, barks, and whatever. And before I forget, this book too, Defenders of the West, has 2 major chapters dealing with Spain around the persons of El Cid, whose real name, of course, is like our previous guest, Rodrigo, or as I call him, because I anglicized it into Roderick, but Rodrigo El Cid de Vivar. And you can see his entire wars with the Muslims, but also Saint Fernando or Saint Ferdinand, another who's actually I believe a descendant of El Cid. Yeah, it's just amazing when you spend time writing these books and studying, like I have, about Spain and its history with Muslims, and then you get these politicians that he's talking about who are just completely, doing the exact opposite of what their ancestors did for centuries. You know, rivers of blood were spilled to actually eject Islam out of Spain and preserve Spain's integrity and the Christianity and the culture and the civilization. And then these rotten, spoiled brats, come to power and overturn it all and throw it away and say, "Oh, you guys were bad and you were racist and Islamophobes and blah blah blah," and they destroy the country. So this is the importance of history, and that's why you should learn it so you don't fall prey to all the woke viruses and madness going on. Lies Destroy Lives. Rodrigo, have you read The Third Choice by Mark Dury? It's not available in Spanish. I'll try to share that with Rodrigo. I talk to him very often. Eagles, 400 joules. Okay. Lies Destroy Lives. Andrew Clavin interviewed Redeemed Zoomer about saving churches from Marxists. Really good advice. Yeah. Saving churches from Marxists would be great. Lies Destroy Lives. We won't have true freedom of speech until all people are not afraid to publicly criticize the messenger of Allah in public. Yeah. We won't have true speech, free speech, until we learn to criticize all. You can't have any sacred cows or any taboos at this point. The more something is you can't criticize it, the more we should be able to, because that means there's a reason for it. Coltrane, blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Ah, you got that. Maybe you did, but I think it's I think it's the epitaph in one of my books. Let's see. I think it's Defenders of the West. Or maybe not. I don't remember. Aha. It's, yeah. Praise be the Lord my God. He trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle. I put it there with other biblical verses like a trampled spring in a polluted well is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. This is Proverb 25:26. That's a pretty good one, right? Think about it. Like a trampled spring and a polluted well is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. That's basically everyone in the West. Polluted wells, because everyone in the West gives way before the wicked, don't they? All right. Greetings from Cedar Hill, Jasper Owens. Thank you for all your hard work. Thanks, Jasper. I appreciate it. Bix Mix. I've wanted to ask you this: if there's this overbearing 1984 tech lord presence that doesn't look like it's going away, why would they tolerate this? Who's they? Who tolerate it? If there's this overbearing 1984 tech lord presence that doesn't look like it's going away, and there does seem to be that, and it doesn't look like going away, why would they tolerate this? I assume you mean the regular people, because they've been indoctrinated and it's kind of become a normal part to just we're born and you're born and you live, and your mentality and your brain has been shaped by it, and you just expect this tech lord 1984 presence to be there. So it's the normal thing. It's that boiling frog analogy. In this case, you're not boiled because it's just part of it's happened incrementally, right? Slowly. I don't know. It's getting late. Indulge me here. Hi, SoCal Coco, new YouTube member. Hi. Dawn Girl, thank you, Raymond. Are you going to put out a video of your recent travels? Yes. Yes. If you on social media and some places, I've been putting little videos. I've been traveling around in Transylvania, believe it or not. I spent over a week in search of Vlad the Impaler, as well as John Hunyadi, because his castle, his original birthplace castle, is in Transylvania and other places. And I've got a lot of footage, which now I need to edit and put together. But absolutely, those should be very different. And I hope you all like them when the time comes. Augustus. So is Mr. Ballester a Hispanista? I don't know what that means. I figure Hispanic. Well, he's Spanish. He's a Spaniard. Hanif Ray, thank you for my birthday message. You are the reason I raise money for Christian charities. Ah, I remember. I'm glad you got it, and I hope you you enjoyed it. I think I was in an airport, but I hope you got it and you liked it. From your Palestinian Christian disciple, Deus Vult. Happy to hear it, Hanif. And once again, happy birthday. Queenic, my fam are worried as white women, ex-Muslims. We are planning to move to US. I want to expose Islam from a convert perspective. Any advice? So you're a former Muslim and you want to expose Islam? Well, expose away. You know, I don't know. Talk to people, make YouTube videos, go on social media. But if you're a former Muslim, you might want to, you know, watch out, because you will be seen, no doubt you already are seen, as a traitor. So be on guard. Lies destroyed lives. Received no notification the live stream was on. That doesn't sound good. But it's not unexpected. Gold coin. Gold coin. Coin. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining. This was like a last minute live stream. Like I said, I only got back to this area where I'm at. And as you can see, this isn't my home. No noobs around, right? Figuratively and literally. So I have much to do, but this was very important to talk about, because right when I look at the news, all of a sudden, all I hear is, you know, there's this mass invasion and just, you know, all of it looking so reminiscent of the things that I do write and talk about from 14 centuries ago. So stay tuned and do check out the video that I released about 2 days ago with me and Rodrigo actually sitting together and fleshing out a lot of these topics in an even more methodical way. So until next time, take care. Bye.